There is a form of psychological erosion that occurs in men who have done everything correctly, and it does not announce itself with crisis or conflict. It appears as a low-grade discomfort that has no name. You feel it most clearly in moments when you should feel satisfied. You have built what you were told to build. You have responsibilities that matter. You have consistency. You have avoided disaster. And yet there is something underneath all of it that feels like waiting. Not waiting for something specific, just waiting. And the longer this feeling persists, the more you begin to suspect that what you are waiting for will never arrive. This is not dissatisfaction with circumstances. This is dissatisfaction with the self that those circumstances have produced. And most men do not understand the difference until they have spent years trying to fix the wrong problem. You start by examining your relationship. You ask yourself if you are happy. The answer is not clear. You are not unhappy. But you are also not what you imagined happiness would feel like. You look at your partner and you see someone you care about, someone you have built a life with, someone who has done nothing wrong. And that is the problem. There is no problem. There is no betrayal, no neglect, no failure. Just a quiet, persistent feeling that this is not enough. And because you cannot point to anything wrong, you tell yourself the feeling is irrational. You tell yourself you are being ungrateful. You tell yourself it will pass. It does not pass. You begin to notice small irritations that were always there but did not bother you before. The way she speaks, the way she plans, the predictability of her reactions. These are not new behaviors. They are the same behaviors you once found endearing or at least acceptable. But now they feel like evidence of something larger. Evidence that you have become locked into a pattern that no longer fits. And you do not know when the fit stopped working, only that it has. You tell yourself this is normal. You tell yourself all relationships go through phases. You tell yourself that comfort is a good thing. And on some level, you believe that. But on another level, deeper and less accessible, you feel something else. You feel the absence of tension. You feel the absence of uncertainty. You feel the absence of the version of yourself that existed when outcomes were not yet determined. This is the part most men do not recognize until much later. The discomfort is not about the relationship. It is about the self you became inside the relationship. It is about the slow, imperceptible process by which you traded complexity for stability. You made that trade consciously. You made it willingly. You believed it was the correct trade. And for a long time, it was. But the man who made that trade is not the same man who is now living with the consequences. And the man you are now is starting to realize that the life you built is a reflection of decisions made by someone you no longer fully recognize. You look at your career. You look at your routines. You look at your friendships. And you see the same pattern. Everything is functional. Everything works. But nothing feels like it is yours. It feels like you are managing a life that belongs to someone else. Someone responsible. Someone stable. Someone who made all the right choices. And you resent him. Not because he was wrong, but because he did not leave room for the part of you that wanted something other than correctness. Most men reach this point and assume the solution is external. They assume they need a change. A new job, a new city, a new relationship. And sometimes they pursue those changes. They leave. They start over. They convince themselves that the problem was the situation, not the self. And for a short time, the discomfort disappears. There is novelty. There is risk. There is the return of uncertainty, and it feels like proof that they were right. The problem was the life they had built. The problem was the commitments they had made. The problem was everything outside of them. But the feeling returns. It always returns. Because the problem was never the life. The problem was the process by which they built it. The problem was the version of themselves they abandoned in order to become acceptable. And that version does not disappear. It does not die. It remains underneath, unacknowledged and unintegrated, generating a constant, low-level signal that something is missing. This is not about regret. Regret is clarity. Regret is knowing what you would do differently. This is the opposite. This is the feeling that you did everything right and still ended up in the wrong place. And that is far more destabilizing than failure. Failure gives you a target. Failure tells you what to fix. This gives you nothing. This just tells you that the map you followed was incomplete. You start to notice other men, men who seem unbothered, men who seem content, men who have the same life you have, but do not carry the same discomfort. And you wonder what they know that you do not. You wonder if they feel nothing, or if they have simply accepted that this is what life is. You wonder if the problem is that you are expecting too much, or if the problem is that you have accepted too little, and you do not ask them. Because the question itself feels like an admission of something you are not ready to admit. The discomfort begins to extend into your body. You sleep poorly. You wake up tired. You feel a tightness in your chest that has no medical explanation. You feel restless in moments when you should feel calm. You feel the need to move, to act, to do something, but you do not know what. And so you do nothing. You wait. You tell yourself it is temporary. You tell yourself it is stress. You tell yourself it will resolve on its own. It does not resolve. You begin to fantasize. Not about specific people or specific outcomes, just about the feeling of being different, the feeling of being unbound, the feeling of making a decision that has no justification other than desire. You do not act on these fantasies. You are not that kind of man. You are the kind of man who thinks things through, who considers consequences, who does not burn his life down over a feeling. And you are proud of that. But you are also aware that the pride is starting to feel like a cage. This is when the resentment begins. Not loud resentment. Not the kind that leads to arguments or accusations. Quiet resentment. Resentment that sits in the background of every interaction. Resentment toward your partner for being exactly who she has always been. Resentment toward your job for being stable. Resentment toward your life for working. And most of all, resentment toward yourself for not being able to explain why none of it feels like enough. You start to withdraw. Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone would notice. You just stop offering as much. You stop engaging as deeply. You become functional but distant. You show up but you are not present, and the people around you sense it. They ask if you are okay, and you say yes. Because you are okay. Nothing is wrong. You are just tired. You are just busy. You are just going through something. And they believe you. Because there is no evidence to the contrary. Because you are still doing everything you are supposed to do. But you are not doing it for the same reasons. You are doing it because stopping would require an explanation you do not have. You are doing it because the alternative is confrontation. Confrontation with yourself. Confrontation with the reality that the life you built is not the life you want. And you are not ready for that confrontation, because you do not know what comes after it. This is the point where most men make one of two choices. They either suppress the feeling entirely, or they act on it recklessly. Suppression works for a while. You can bury the discomfort under work, under routine, under distraction. You can tell yourself it does not matter. You can tell yourself you are being selfish. You can tell yourself that everyone feels this way, and that maturity is learning to live with it. And for some men, that works. They reach a kind of peace with it. They accept that this is the trade. They accept that comfort costs something, and they stop asking questions. But for other men, suppression is not an option. The discomfort grows. It becomes intrusive. It starts to affect their behavior in ways they cannot control. They become irritable. They become impatient. They start picking fights over nothing. They start making impulsive decisions. They start looking for exits. And when they finally act, they act badly. They leave without explanation. They pursue someone new without ending what they have. They blow up their life in a way that confirms everyone's worst assumptions about them. And they tell themselves they had no choice. They tell themselves they were suffocating. They tell themselves they had to do something. And in a narrow sense, they are right. But they are also wrong, because the thing they needed to do was not external, it was internal. And they skip that part. The truth is that this discomfort is not a signal that your life is wrong. It is a signal that you have outgrown the framework you used to build it. You built your life using a set of assumptions about what mattered: security, stability, responsibility, approval. And those assumptions were not false. They were just incomplete. They were the assumptions of a man trying to prove something, trying to show that he could build a life that worked, trying to show that he was capable, reliable, trustworthy. And he succeeded. He built that life. But the man who needed to prove those things no longer exists. And the life that was built to prove them no longer serves the man who remains. This is not about rejecting responsibility. This is not about abandoning commitments. This is about recognizing that the self is not static. The man you were at 25 had different needs than the man you are at 35. And the man you are at 35 has different needs than the man you will be at 45. And if you do not allow space for that evolution, you will spend your life managing a structure that no longer fits. Most men do not realize this until the structure collapses, until the discomfort becomes unbearable, until they do something irreversible. And then they look back and they see it clearly. They see that the signs were always there. They see that the feeling was not irrational. They see that they were not broken. They were just living in a framework designed for someone else, someone they used to be, someone they no longer are. By the time you realize this, years have passed. You have spent those years trying to fix a problem that did not exist. You have spent those years blaming circumstances, blaming other people, blaming yourself for not being satisfied with what you have. And none of it worked, because the problem was never about what you had. The problem was about who you became in order to have it. And here is what most men never hear. You cannot go back. You cannot undo the years. You cannot reclaim the version of yourself that you abandoned. That version is gone. The only question is whether you will continue to live as if he still exists, or whether you will allow yourself to become someone new. Someone who is not defined by the need to prove. Someone who is not afraid of his own complexity. Someone who does not need his life to be simple in order to feel secure. This is not a call to action. This is not advice. This is just the pattern. And the pattern is always the same. Men build lives that work. And then they spend years feeling like something is missing. And they do not understand why. And by the time they understand, the cost of change feels insurmountable. And so they stay. Not because they want to, but because leaving would require becoming someone they do not know how to be. And that is the real trap. Not the life you built, but the belief that you are only allowed to be the man who built it.